for this wind to move in. Now, I know a lot of folks may be saying, well, what about us here in Louisville? What about Floyd County, Clark County? These storms eventually will be weakening. I can't promise that before they reach the river, though. And that just means that as these storms move through over the next hour, 2 hours, they do have the potential to be strong, especially within the next hour. And then we'll just have to wait to see when that weakening trend starts. A lot of that's dependent on when the upper level or the low level jet will sort of ease back a little bit. And right now, it's just now starting to crank up. Now, in addition to the severe weather that we have, you'll notice our polygons that are green. That's an indicator of areas that have seen the same rain over and over. So a lot of rain falling. I'm going to put this into motion so you can see it, and you'll notice as it moves from west to east, a lot of the same places are getting hit with tremendous amounts of rainfall, and that has led to some flash flood warnings in those areas as well. Again, the only warnings that we have, and you'll notice the tornado warning has now ended for Lawrence County, so that's some good news, and that ended a little bit earlier than expected, so they've canceled that warning. Good news there. Let's go back into that and just take a closer view, and I'll explain why. The rotation has sort of ebbed and flowed with this whole storm, tightening at times, letting up at other times. We clearly see where we have the inflow to that storm past Bedford, south of US 50. We go back to the velocity on that, and you'll notice it's not as tight as it was. So we still have pockets of heavy wind in places, but the tight rotation is not there at this point. That's not to say that it will not tighten up again. We've seen it happen already a couple of times. That could happen as it moves on to the east into parts of western Jackson County, Indiana. So we'll be watching that closely. I'm going to zoom back out. We'll make one more lap through the radar, and we'll just let you know we're here. We're going to be here all night. We're watching these storms for you, and if we need to jump back on, we will, especially as this Boeing segment moves closer to us, and depending on what those winds are. So here's the idea. If you hear the alarms go off, if you get the notification from the Wave Weather app, if you turn the TV on and we're on, that's a problem. That means you got to pay attention. We're not just going to stay on for the fun of it, though. And I'll point out that we do have those storms with a lot of lightning. So many of you that are up now watching what's going on may say, yeah, I'm going to go back to bed. Odds are, especially if you're in southern Indiana, this thunder and lightning may wake you up or prevent you from going to sleep. It's going to be a pretty loud night, especially across parts of Washington, Orange, Crawford, northern Harrison, perhaps even western Clark County, and certainly Du Bois County, that you can see those showers and thunderstorms moving in. Jessica, before we roll back, anything else that you have?
I was just going to time out some of the areas that might see this Boeing line first over the next, I would say, 30 or so minutes. We have places like Jasper. You're probably feeling the effects of this Boeing segment right now. We have Zoar about 12:29, so within the next minute and a half or so. Du Bois, you're likely going to feel the effects of this by about 12:35. Crystal, 12:38, and then places like Ellisworth, you're going to be feeling the effects of this storm by about 12:42. And we'll continue to monitor for any reports. Just remember to stay inside as the storm's passing. Don't try to go outside and look at it. It's going to be too dark and too rain wrapped.
All right, let's jump back to the radar view, and I'll zoom in, and then we'll say goodbye for now. But I want to point out that we have had some power outages reported across parts of Du Bois County. Again, just outside of our viewing area. When we look at Jasper, Du Bois, Ireland is the place that you'll notice where we have had some power outages. Portersville, we've got spotters and emergency management in, so we're watching those storms as they push through. Can't rule out a little bit of hail where you see that darker purple. That would be up toward Reeve. But really, it's a blast of wind, and it's just now moving into Jasper. Our winds are fairly calm here in Louisville. When we take a wider view of this, you'll see what we're talking about. Nothing going on here, but this is a cluster of storms that will slowly sink to the south. Should arrive here between, I'd say, now and about 3 a.m. Going to get closer to the river by that point. And then they should be weakening within, let it pass another hour, and then we should be seeing a weakening trend. We also have power outages a few miles north of Ireland in northwestern parts of Du Bois County. So we are seeing some power outages in this zone as this moves farther to the south and east. And in general, let me just put it into motion for you because a lot of folks get a better handle of what's happening. You can see it's Well, you can notice the movement of this while it's moving to the east and is slowly sinking to the south. So northern parts of Du Bois County, next in line would be parts of Orange and far western parts of Crawford County. That is the severe thunderstorm warning that we have, and the tornado warning that was in place for Lawrence County has expired. We'll get you back to programming. We're here watching it. If we need to jump back on, we certainly will with updates. So keep it tuned to Wave 3. For Jessica Dobson, I'm Kevin Harnett. We'll stay with our view. I'll zoom back into it for us. We'll get resituated. If you were watching just minutes ago, we were tracking that storm from Lawrence County into Jackson County. That storm has lost some of its rotation, but we have had some power outages, 70-mile-per-hour winds moving across parts of Du Bois County. Power is out in Jasper. Du Bois likely seeing some of that very strong wind. This is going to be moving off to the east at about 20-25 miles an hour. This is going to affect the Patoka Lake area. French Lick, hard hit from a series of storms we've had over the last couple of months. Remember the large hail that moved through there? We don't have to worry about so much in the way of hail on this storm, but we certainly do have the wind threat and the potential for some rotation. We go back to the velocity on this, and again, it's mainly a wind maker, but the wind is strong. 60, 70-mile-per-hour wind gust, possibly moving from Jasper toward Du Bois, taking an aim very much close to the Patoka Lake area, and perhaps bounded by French Lick and Patoka. So you can see that is the zone across Orange County. This is mainly going to affect the southern half of Orange County. It is a major wind maker moving in your way. We already have from a number of the emergency managers across parts of Du Bois County power outages. Ireland, just northwest of Ireland. That's a location in the northwest part of Du Bois County. Also in Jasper, we have received reports of some very strong winds and power outages. Again, this is moving to the east at about 20 to 25 miles an hour. It's not moving fast, but it's certainly enough with the lightning and the thunder to get your attention. And when those winds arrive, you'll know it. Back to the radar we go. Just to point out that is the push of rain and wind moving in. The tornado warning for part of Du Bois County, Indiana, as well as Orange County, Indiana at this point. That is the location of concern. I mentioned it was moving at about 20 to 25 miles an hour. I want to put on the lightning so you can see that, yes, it is going to come in with some noise. We are hearing the thunder. We are seeing the lightning if you're anywhere close to this storm. So that's the lightning we're looking at. We go back to our radar view, and let's just keep that on, and let's take a look at a few things inside the storm. When we query the storm, you'll notice as this moves across parts of Du Bois, and I'm just going to zoom in a little more, and with that, we go back to the home view just so I can show you that precipitation rate was very heavy coming down because we're seeing many areas receive precipitation with one cell after another, and it's that repetitive movement to the east that is causing the flash flooding in some places there as well. We have no storms in Louisville or anywhere in our Kentucky viewing area. All of our storms are situated in southern Indiana and especially parts of Du Bois and Orange County at this point. I'm going to just zoom back into that quadrant of our viewing area because this is the one that has been the most active. Let me put back on the velocity, and with that we can see pockets of wind. We were watching this weakened out as it moves over into Jackson County. Still some wind, 40, maybe even as high as 50-mile-per-hour winds moving into Jackson County, but the strongest winds we have right now are moving into the far eastern parts of Du Bois County, and this will be pushing over into western parts of Orange County. So let me zoom back in, and then we'll just kind of go from there. Again, Patoka Lake, Norton, Du Bois, very strong wind passing through. Ellsworth would be next in line to see some of this very strong wind. The strong winds continue. Hayesville still seeing wind. There's Ireland. Remember I mentioned Ireland and northwest of Ireland had power outages. Jasper, power outages. That's the same deal that's moving even to Celestine and Snellville. That would be an area that we'd watch for some strong winds. So even if you're not in the tornado warning itself, you could still pick up some very strong winds. That tornado warning includes Du Bois, the strongest winds passing by that. Again, just looking, we're getting flash flood warnings coming in. So the Lawrence County nuisance flooding probably likely across parts of Lawrence County as well as Du Bois County with these storms passing by. The strongest winds have not reached Patoka Lake, but they're only about 10 minutes away. Norton and French Lick, you're going to see a pretty good push of wind as well. We do see some rotation, but this is really a big wind maker. We're talking 60, 70 mile per hour winds possible with this as it pushes through. Let's go over to Jessica Dobson at this time of day. I mean, we're just after midnight, Jessica. Tough to get reports. Hard enough to get people to wake up and say, hey, pay attention. Pretty strong storm moving your way.
Yeah, if you can sleep through the amount of lightning these storms have, that's impressive. But so far, out of the storm we had in Lawrence County a few moments ago, it looks like no reports at this time from the emergency managers in Lawrence County. We're watching for the potential of that flash flooding, as we mentioned, but so far, no reports at this time. It's not too surprising with the fact that it is dark outside, but we do have those power outages. So if you're out ahead of this storm, it's a good idea to make sure you're charging your devices, getting your plan ready to go, making sure you have the pets in place just in case your power does go out, or two, you're caught underneath one of these warnings. And I will time out some of these locations where the strong wind is happening, along with some of that rotation that's happening. We'll see that arrive in Paoli for by about 12:57, so just a few minutes before the 1 o'clock hour. Youngs Creek, you'll see this arrive sometime around 12:55. Newton Stewart right around 12:46. So we've got a couple of minutes, but these are some very powerful winds that we're going to be watching here over the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, and looking at the forward speed of this now, it's speeding up just a bit, so we're looking at about 40 to 45 miles an hour as it moves closer to Patoka Lake. And that's, again, some folks spending the last few days of summer break. Maybe you're camping. Again, tough to be on the lake, meaning camping, not necessarily on the lake, but around the lake when you've got this type of storm moving in. So friends or family that you have there, you might just ring them, let them know they've got quite a burst of wind coming their way. That is not a good place to be in those campers or tents or whatever may be the limited structure that you have when you're out camping like that. So Patoka Lake in the zone of some very strong winds moving in this early morning hour. We're at 12:41 at this point with heavy rain and, more importantly, blast of wind moving in. The tornado warning continues for eastern parts of Du Bois County, a good chunk of western and the southern part of Orange County from French Lick down toward Patoka Lake. You can see they're dry right now, but they won't be for long. Some heavy rain moving in on the heels of this storm as it pushes past. Put it into motion for you as we work this through Du Bois. Power outages. It happened in a hurry. Boom. It was a quick hit of wind that was on the order of 60, maybe as high as 70 miles an hour in some cases with this, moving off to the east, 45 miles an hour. Some rotation, but really a forward push of wind, straight line winds causing some problems. Going to stop the radar. We'll stop that. We'll go back to the velocity. And with that, we can take a look just to see, again, some rotation showing up. Northern parts of, as we work this just through Norton. So that's going to take you right up toward French Lick. Let me zoom out just a little bit for folks that are watching from Louisville. I'm going to try to zoom this out by dragging the box a little bit bigger there. Again, if you've been over in Jasper, Portersville, we had the emergency manager who had some spotters out there. We've noted in Du Bois and Jasper power outages already. With that, we can see the lightning from our SkyTrack cameras. We've got the Starlight camera up in the studio here, so I'm seeing some of the lightning as well. But again, you can see that sort of bowing segment. That's where we have some wind. What causes the radar to bow out like that is the forward push of wind. It's the movement. So right on that apex would where we probably see the strongest winds. Again, still strong all the way down this line, but that's where we would have the strongest. So from French Lick down to Patoka Lake, you're in the tornado warning. You're in for some strong winds. The potential for some rotation still exists, and that is the zone that we're watching as it moves off to the east at about 40 to 45 miles an hour. Again, reports at this time of night are tough to get, especially when it's moving through a rural area, but especially at this time of night because so many people are asleep. If you know folks, have family or friends, whether you're in far eastern parts of Du Bois County, which now that storm's already, they're probably awake by now, but the western parts of Orange County from French Lick down to Patoka Lake and perhaps over toward Youngers Creek just south of Paoli, you might give them a call and say, hey, you know what's happening? Turn Kevin and Jessica on. we're watching the storms. Watch them as they move in because they're going to pack some wind. Doesn't necessarily mean everybody's going to have damage, no, but it does mean that a few places could see that surge of wind where we wind up seeing some pretty strong gust. And that's what we've noted when we've looked at the velocity. We can see that, and I'll show you some of the reports here in a second. Again, on this edge is where we would have the strongest wind. Still seeing some strong winds even in the wake of that. So when we go back to our reports and we try to look at some of the wind reports, let's just see if we have any. This is from what we call MPing. These are viewer-submitted reports, and you do that on the website. No, and again, late at night, tough to get the reports. Let's see if we have any others that would be coming in from the National Weather Service. Local storm reports. And no, we have none of those in that general area either. I'm going to zoom this out. We'll just go to the home view and see what we've seen. Sometimes this gives us an idea of what's to come. Back when the storms crossed over from Illinois into Indiana, we had some hail reports, wind reports, southern Illinois. Since then, you can see we haven't had a whole lot of storm reports coming in. Part of that is not because they're not producing damage. It's because of the time of day. That makes it tough. You know, people are like, okay, it's not affecting me going to bed. They don't know that across the street there are trees down in some cases. And in many cases now we know that the power is out. Let's go over to Jessica Dobson. She may have some additional reports to give.
Yeah, we have a couple of viewers who have been messaging us saying they've heard the sirens, and I just want to reiterate, you don't want to rely on the outdoor sirens. I'm glad that you can hear them, but it's always a scenario where you want to make sure you have things like a weather radio that you can rely on that's loud, it's in your home. We have, it looks like we just got a report in from the emergency manager in Du Bois County. Wind gusts as high as around almost 56 miles per hour. That was just reported in northeastern Du Bois County. So very strong wind gusts are going to be expected as this line continues to push in from the north and west, and it's starting to enter parts of Orange County. So if you're in places like Paoli, you want to make sure that you are staying inside, you're in your safe place, because we are also tracking some of that rotation with these. We're going to continue to monitor some of the reports, and I've been watching some of our cameras too to check to see if we have any sort of nice shots of the lightning where we can see the structure of the storm, and it's not quite close enough yet, but we'll continue to keep a close eye on it.
All right, lightning can be a bigger problem than anything else sometimes, but we certainly have the wind. So again, we go back. This is just a repetitive process for us as we dive into the storm. It changes scan by scan. We have the tornado warnings, Du Bois County, the southern quadrant, southwestern quadrant of Orange County. Again, watching a little rotation showing up just south of Halbert. This would be an area of concern as well. So we've got one area down moving into Orange County and another one that possibly could. So this, I'll just circle it for you so you know what areas we're watching. Again, there's a little bit of rotation showing up there. We've got more just off to the south there. That's an area that we're watching. 2 zones of possible rotation as that moves off to the east. Now I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. This is the only warned storm that we have in terms of both tornadic as well as severe thunderstorm. So you'll notice in Crawford County, you're not under a tornado warning, but you are under a severe thunderstorm warning. All right. That's where we're looking at the very strong winds pushing through. They're going to continue the tornado warning. You see it sort of flashing. So Du Bois County out of this. It's now squarely into the southwest quadrant of Orange County, and that's where we will be continuing to watch that push of wind and possible rotation. So it's just north of French Lick. Let's go. We got the zoom. Here we go. We'll zoom back in. I'll give you a pretty tight view on this. See where that's sort of bowing out, strong winds moving in, a little bit of rotation. We can see the rotation by looking at the velocity. It would be very close to French Lick, not far from it, with a push of wind coming in on the backside. This is going to take it close to Paoli, so you're not out of the woods in Paoli. Youngs Creek, yes, we've got some wind moving in your direction too. This is the push of wind that we're talking about, so typically it would just be ahead of that, but it's going to push that wind forward, and it's moving at about 40 to 45 miles an hour. So you're looking at, roughly 10 miles away, so that's going to take you not all that long, less than, 10, 20 minutes before we start to see some of that very strong wind up in Paoli and Youngs Creek. All right, let's go back to the radar view as we continue to see the reflectivity and the velocity. There's one thing that's missing that no one's complaining about, and that's the hail. We haven't had a whole lot of hail reports out of this, and in fact, Jessica's looking at that now, Jessica, so we'll just kick it over to you. What's moving near Patoka and Paoli, not much hail, but the other storm that I was watching just north of that does have the potential for some small hail, it looks like.
Yeah, it doesn't look like any very large hail reports, and that really isn't necessarily expected, but if you're near places like Halbert or Scarlett, that's where we could start to see some of the hail reports begin to come in. It can get a little noisy when the hail's coming down too, especially on your roof, but that's where we have some of the potential of seeing some of those hailstones fall with the taller thunderstorms that we're expecting. But near Du Bois, just to the east, near Patoka Lake, maybe some smaller hail trying to form close to pea size, but that's really all we're seeing in terms of the hail reports, and no other reports either of damage so far just yet, and we'll continue to monitor that as these continue to progress their way further into Orange County.
All right, again, we're tracking a couple of storms. There's one tornado warning that includes a chunk of Orange County. We see that with the strong wind. This storm also picking up speed, so now it's moving at about 55 to 60 miles per hour. Again, the low-level jet continues to increase, and that's helping propel these storms and add a little fuel to it as well. So it gives us a little more shear, a little more forward speed, and frankly, a little more of a punch, and that's what we're going to be dealing with for about another hour or so. Then the storms will begin to weaken just a bit. The tornado warning, again, that is in place, that will continue until, and I'm looking at the time here, what was the expiration time, Jess, do you? 1 a.m.
Yes.
So we've got that for another 10 minutes as that moves through. Let me go back to the velocity view here. And yes, we still have some rotation on the northern fringe of that push of wind out ahead, and just south of that, that's going to be pushing closer to Young's Creek. We'll see if we get an extension of the tornado warning. Wouldn't be surprised as it moves closer to Paoli and beyond. That's going to take it very close to US 150 as it makes that crossover, so a big push of wind moving through there. Still keeping an eye out for any type of damage, because there's one thing about it. We can have the best radar system in the world, but there's nothing better than a set of eyes, or the ground truth as we call it, and that's what's really helpful. So when safe to do, we always appreciate your reports, especially during emergency weather. You can see that that storm is now approaching Paoli faster than I said a while ago when I said it'd take about 10 minutes. No, because the storm picked up quite a bit of speed. Instead of moving at 30 to 40 miles an hour, it's now moving at 60 miles an hour. So cut that speed in half, and it's already knocking on the door of Paoli and about to cross over 150. That is the only tornado warning that we have in place at this point. Not sure if that will be extended or not. When we look at the velocity on this, the powerful wind is easing just a bit. Notice how it's a little more broken than where it was in that sort of apex of that push of wind, but we still see a little rotation up around the Paoli area. The reds and greens together are an indicator of that rotation. Reds going away from the radar, greens toward the radar. So that's the rotation that we have in this storm. The powerful push of wind is along that leading edge. That's going to be a push of wind, and so will it be to the south as well. And that's why places in southern parts of Orange County and western parts of Crawford County are under a severe thunderstorm warning. So may not have the rotation to contend with, but still some strong winds that are available for that area, meaning that it could happen in terms of 50, 60 mile an hour winds. That's enough to cause damage. We've certainly seen across the area, most notably back in parts of Du Bois County near Ireland, just about 4 miles northwest of Ireland, and in Jasper, that we've had power outages, and that's likely to be the case as well. Jess, what do you have?
Looks like we have a couple of damage reports coming in now from Du Bois County from the emergency manager there. Looks like possible structural damage at 8144 Crystal Road. That's in northeastern Du Bois County. It's a report of considerable tree damage as well at 7404 North US Highway 231. That's going to be near Hayesville. And then also we have, looks like that 8144 address is possible tornado damage to a home. So we're going to try to get more information on that.
Okay, you see the new tornado warning coming out. Again, this is a continuation of the one we were watching. So from Paoli, now taking it into Washington County, Indiana. This is Orange and Washington counties. Again, radar indicated, but Did you hear Jess? She said there's already damage reported from this same storm. It's moving at a fairly fast pace now. It's picked up to 55 miles an hour off to the east. That's going to track it across the eastern part of Orange County. It's going to take it through Paoli, where it is now, and move it right across parts of Washington County, Indiana. Salem would be in line. This goes until 1:15, so about 20 minutes or so on that warning. Moving fast now, radar indicated, but we have had damage. So regardless if the tornado touchdown or if it's just straight line winds, we have enough energy in the atmosphere with these storms pulling it down to the surface. Regardless if it's rotating or just blasting in as straight line winds, it's going to cause some problems. We have had power outages in a number of places in Du Bois County, likely also into Orange County. We'll make some phone calls across parts of Orange County. The newsroom and Jessica both working on that to see what type of damage we may have in Orange County. It's already past French Lick, Patoka Lake, and Paoli, so that's an area of concern as it moves off to the east. Again, I put this into motion. It's going to go by so fast because as it was moving 60, 55 miles an hour, tough to keep up the pace as these storms push through off to the east, and they're really only packing a wind punch. We haven't had much in the way of hail across our area, and that's at least some good news. We knew the wind would be a problem because as the night settles in, we pick up that low-level jet stream. And that's where we start to kick up the winds as you work your way up in height. Well, the storms bring some of that wind back down to the surface, and that's where we could see some pretty strong winds come out, especially where you see this apex or bowing. That's a strong blast of wind. Could even see some rotation on that. And again, we can point that out by looking at the velocity. When we look at that, we have rotation right over the Paoli area. Follow my hand. This is going to track right across the far eastern parts of Orange County. If you're in Paoli, you've got to be in your tornado safe place. You have to be low. That's the storm that we have in our sights. That is where we're watching. Now, out of Du Bois County, we've had from the emergency manager wind damage, structural damage to a home. On the big board, we have the tornado warning, 20 more minutes for Orange and Washington counties. Severe thunderstorm warning also includes the northwestern parts of Crawford County for another 5 minutes. The tornado safe place is the lowest level. Sometimes it's a basement or a storm shelter. If you don't have one, it's just as low as you can go. Find your way into an interior space. Oftentimes that's a hallway or a bathroom. Under the stairs if you have downstairs. Just someplace without windows. You don't want to be on an outside wall because of the windows. You'll notice our temperature here at this hour is 80 degrees. Some rain-cooled air will be coming in. It's going to take a little time. These are current wind gusts, 25 Evansville, 18 Paoli. There, again, are severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings. We've noted the lightning going on across the area. The radar has shown us that lightning. Let me go back to that, and I'll point out that the lightning that is coming in is pretty intense. Jess, go ahead. What do you have?
Just one report, again, from Du Bois County. We're starting to see there's usually a delay when it comes to reports. Hayesville Fire Chief reports multiple trees down along State Road 56, also trees possibly onto a home. So obviously, whether it was tornado or straight line winds, these were very powerful and obviously caused some damage too.
Yeah, and I suspect that will continue because what we're looking at in terms of the echoes on the radar have not weakened a whole lot. Let me zoom back in. Again, I mentioned the lightning. You can see how lightning packed these storms are. The tornado warning for Orange County that includes French Lick and Paoli for about another 3 minutes. But again, that one was extended, and we have that over into parts of Washington County, and that will go on until 1:15. We'll take everything off but the radar. You can see the storm moving through. Let me get it centered up, and we'll look at the velocity on this as we pan the radar back over. This storm is right along 150. It's going to go just north of 150 right now in parts of Orange County. As we take it off to the east, you can see that we still have the rotation, now moving just east of Paoli, eventually crossing over into Washington County. Washington County, you've got some time. That's the good news, but not a lot. This means you have had advance warning. You should find your way to your lowest level, away from windows. Get low. We have the severe thunderstorm that is continuing to the south with strong winds pushing toward English. They have not extended that severe thunderstorm warning. The strongest winds we have been accompanied with damage across parts of Du Bois County, Orange County, and perhaps extending into Washington County. So that's the area that we continue to really focus on because it has had the damage already reported. We're already also seeing out of Hayesville considerable tree damage, and Jessica mentioned that. Again, you can see from Paoli to Stampers Creek, that's the area where we have the strongest winds. Rotation possible there. That's what we're watching as that moves just south of Campbellsburg, but very close to Livonia. So if you have, again, friends or family in western parts of Washington County, from Livonia, Campbellsburg, Becks Mill, Salem, those are all places that should be on guard and paying attention to the weather as we speak. This has a history of producing damage, tree damage, structural damage. We've seen it because of the strong winds. And regardless if those winds were rotating or not, they are strong and they can cause damage. Straight line winds, tornadic winds, doesn't really matter in a situation like this. Oftentimes we think of those big tornadoes as being the biggest problem. We're not dealing with that type of a scenario today. These would be small spin-ups, but regardless, if it's a small spin up or a straight line wind, 70 miles an hour winds or 70 mile an hour winds, no matter the direction, and it can cause problems. We've seen that with a number of power outages across the area. That rotation is now squarely over Stampers Creek. That will continue moving off to the east. Trees are down on State Road 56 across Du Bois County. This is 150. The strongest winds have just crossed that in Orange County, and that's going to take it over. You can see the back edge of that warning has expired, so that was the one scheduled to expire at 1 o'clock. It's out. Obviously, the storm is now within bounds of this new tornado warning that goes until 1:15. So we've got 15 more minutes on this warning as it continues to track off to the east. I'll recenter so we can see what's happening. This is the storm's rotation. Strong winds along that. Strong winds continue to the south, even down toward Valine, and that will move toward Hardensburg, Indiana. So you're still going to get a pack of, pretty strong winds moving in, but the greatest rotation is across now eastern parts of Orange County, just east of Paoli, and that's going to continue moving at about 55 miles an hour into the western parts of Washington County, Indiana. Salem is still probably another 10-15 minutes away from your area as it moves in that direction. So can't let your guard down yet. We still see the rotation. We still see the pockets of heavy wind. This is going to pack a punch as it moves in with possibly some additional wind damage that we've seen. Jessica?
Yeah, I was going to say meteorologist Tawana Andrews, she's here right now, and she's been making some phone calls to the different call centers, and especially in Orange County, and she has not been able to get through because they are taking 911 calls currently. So we should be getting some damage reports here soon, and we will keep you up to date, but it looks like a lot of trees down, structural damage, especially in Du Bois County, and it looks like we might have a new warning that just came out. Kevin?
All right, let's tackle that one because this is the new severe thunderstorm warning. Remember a while ago I was saying this wind down to the south. The Crawford County storm did not have a warning, but you still had to be paying attention because we were going to have strong winds along this push. Yeah, well, that's now the new warning. Comes right up to the city of Louisville. That will go until 1:15 as well. These storms are racing now. They're moving off to the east roughly at about, let's see here, 50, 55 miles an hour as they push off to the east and sink to the south. This is a push of wind moving through the English area. Haven't had a whole lot of reports of damage out of northern and northwestern parts of Crawford County, but nonetheless, that wind and lightning, along with the heavy rain moving through, the tornado warning sits just north of this warning. Both will expire at 1:15, and then those storms will be knocking on our door here in Louisville. So they'll be here by 1:30, it appears, and then moving through. A lot of lightning, perhaps still a lot of wind, and that's what we're still waiting for these storms to weaken. They haven't shown a lot of weakening at this point. All right, I'm going to put this into motion so you can see the general motion of these storms pushing to the east with a slow jog to the south. So that's the push of wind that will move toward New Salisbury, eventually Corydon, down toward Leavenworth, English, Indiana. You've already had the worst of it. You're getting a lot of rain and lightning now, but the strongest push of wind is past you. That moves off to the east. All right, back to the tornado warning. Still showing the rotation. This is the velocity that we're looking at. We have had damage damage reports out of this storm, all the way from when it was in Du Bois County and tracking across Orange County. Tawana's making calls to the emergency personnel. Here's the deal. We're trying to help everybody tonight. And we can only do that if people know what's going on. And the only way we can know that is the ground truth. What has happened? Tough to tell by the radar if we have any damage. All I can tell you is the wind is strong right here, and it's about 60 to 70 miles an hour. And what we know based on experience is that those kinds of winds, if indeed they're making it to the surface, because you got to realize the radar is shooting out, and the further out it goes, the higher up it goes, because the earth is curved. So believe it or not, what we know is that we have some strong winds, and if they are making it to the ground, we've got problems. We've seen some of those reports coming in. We appreciate the spotters, the emergency managers, all of those folks who work in the 911 call centers, because that allows us the information to give back out to the public to say, hey, indeed, it's happening. It's on the ground. We see it on the radar. Ground truth has proven that it's happening, and that's why it's important in that cycle of working with those emergency personnel. We appreciate you. You'll notice that still we have some rotation. It's getting a little bit broader, meaning it's not right up against each other, but that is where we have some of the strong winds, moving from Livonia to Campbellsburg. This is a zone that we'll be watching as it approaches closer to Salem within about, I'd say, 8 to 10 minutes. All right, let's go back to the reflectivity. And I'm going to zoom back out to our home view. A lot of folks are like, well, I'm in Louisville. I'm not up in southern Indiana. Not raining here yet, but the warning comes right up to us. This is moving in our direction. And again, I think Louisville sees some storms. I think they could still be strong by the time they reach us between 1:30 and 2 a.m. That's the target time for Louisville. And we're going to see a lot of lightning with these storms. I don't think they fizzle out before they get here. I don't necessarily, they will be weakening eventually, but I don't think that happens for another hour or so. So we still have the strong storms moving through. Tawana's coming back in. I know she's been on the phone with some folks, so as soon as she's ready, she'll let me know, and then we'll get a report from her. And Tawana, I hear your mic, so if you have anything,
so I'm just going to jump over here with Jessica.
Sure.
I've been trying to get through to all the dispatches, but right now, all of them are busy. So no word if there's continuing to get more reports or 911 calls. I was trying to get through in Orange County, and immediately she's like, I had 911 calls to take in and just keep going.
Okay.
So I'm going to continue to work to get more information. So far, the reports that we've seen is the reports that you've already been getting in, and I'm going to keep working to get more information for you. But yeah, it's been a busy morning so far. We have to keep watching these storms.
Well, that's a testament to itself. If the 911 calls are coming in, then there are problems. So that's a sign in itself, regardless if we're able to spend time talking, which we would never want to do if actual emergencies are coming in. That's a testament to, well, there are problems. So we'll take that for what it's worth and say we've got some major problems across parts of Orange County. They've got 911 calls coming into the dispatch center, and that means some trees are down, power's out, possibly even worse. Could be structural damage. We don't know exactly what the issues are, but we know there are issues. You can see that strongest rotation is now moving out of Orange County over into parts of Washington County, around Campbellsburg, north of Rosebud and Beck's Mill. This is going to push close to Salem. Again, we said it'd be about another 6 minutes from now. By the time it arrives, that's going to be another blast of wind. We'll see what happens with this area of rotation. It's hung on for quite some time. It's gone across Du Bois County, Orange County, now Washington County. It's not super tight circulation, but it is enough to where we know we have had wind damage and we have had power outages. Jessica will cue up the power outage map for us so we can check that in just a second. In fact, you keep reading my mind. I actually can see what you're looking at, but I wasn't looking at it. Go ahead, Jess.
I know, I saw where your thought process was going, and yeah, we do have some power outages right now. Orange County, Indiana, 5% of customers out. So that's 592 folks without power out of about 12,000. So that's a decent chunk there. And this is just another reason why you want to make sure you're preparing. You want to make sure you're charging those devices just in case you are without power. Grab your flashlight, things like that, maybe some water too, just in case you're left without power for an extended period of time. Obviously, as these storms end, crews will head out and try to repair any power that that is out, but so far that's the only county we have right now with any sort of reported power outages right now, but I'm sure more reports will come in because, again, just like damage reports, they're a little delayed. So we'll keep you up to date with anything else that comes in.
Okay, I appreciate that. As we take a look at what's happening, it's a wind maker potentially rotating, some areas not rotating. We have also noted that with the push of wind, some of this has come with straight line winds, and that's especially true to the south. So I don't want to ignore that. Let me go back to our velocity. We go back to our home view here, and I'm going to put on the radar. And then I'm going to lift it up, and we're going to look at two different things. One, where we have the tightest rotation, and two, where we have the push of wind, where we could just see some straight line winds. I want to try to keep that tornado warning in there. Boom. All right. So two things to watch. We have an area of rotation, which has spawned the tornado warning. I can see that better with the velocity. So let's go back to the velocity. There it is. You can see that's, and notice it's tightening up just a bit. So that's a bad sign. We have the tightening of the velocity right there between Campbellsburg and Rosebud, just north of Becks Mill, moving towards Salem, Indiana, in the lowest level, the basement. Find yourself at the lowest level away from windows, under something sturdy. Could be some stairs, could be a closet, could be a door frame. Maybe it's a bathroom in the bathtub. If you have a bike helmet, sometimes you hear people say put that on. Whatever to protect your head. You need to be in the lowest level, all right? We have the rotation. That's one factor in what we're watching. The other happens to be where you see this arcing out area here. That's a strong push of wind that's coming with heavy rain, a lot of lightning. That's already past English. It's moving past Whiskey Run now. It's going to approach Fairdale, Crandall. It will eventually get close to Corydon. It's right along 64 at this point across parts of Crawford and now moving into Harrison County, Indiana. If I put the reflectivity on, the radar itself, you can see what we're talking about. Notice how it's sort of bowed out. So two areas. We've got the rotation, the possible strong winds with that, and then all along this line that's arced out, some pretty strong winds, capable of 50 to 60 mile per hour winds. This whole mass of storms moving off to the east, slowly jogging to the south, but mainly an eastward movement at about 55 miles per hour. We go back again. We've given good warning to the folks in Washington County for the last 15, 20 minutes at least. We go back to the velocity. I'm going to zoom in tight so you can see what we're watching. Still some pockets of wind behind that. When we look inside that storm at the velocity, this is the rotation. We'll zoom into the tornado warning, and then we'll focus on the severe as it gets closer to the city. 1:15 is the expiration time, so we still technically have 4 more minutes left on this warning. We can still see some of that rotation between Campbellsburg and Livonia. That's going to take you right into Salem, all right? So that is the area of most concern in terms of strong winds. Notice the last scan broken a little bit. That'll come back around. Nonetheless, we continue to see the strong winds pushing very close to Campbellsburg, moving right toward Salem, Indiana. We have had a number of power outages. We've had structural damage back across parts of Du Bois County. So we know that these storms have had enough wind and energy to cause problems. And Jessica just gave us the power outages, at least as we see them, and those go up by the minute. We don't have the real-time information. It's just the reported time. So we wind up seeing 5% of customers across Orange County without power. So we're already seeing that we've got some issues. You factor in that Tawana has talked to the 911 operator who says, I've got too many 911 calls to take, can't talk to you. That's okay. We get it. Hang up and say, we know we're having problems across Orange County. We continue to see these storms move into Washington County, and Salem is next in line. The rotation has become a little broader, so you can see it's not just one tight circulation, but the wind is still there. And that's still going to be a concern with winds of 60, perhaps higher, mile per hour higher, as it moves closer to Salem, Indiana. That is an area that we continue to watch as it moves off to the east at about 55 miles an hour. Jessica, what do you have?
I've been looking at some of our SkyTrack cameras once again to get an idea of if we can see some of the lightning and some of the storm structure. And so far with our SkyTrack camera in Starlight, Indiana, we can see a little bit of that as it inches closer and closer to our southern Indiana counties along the river especially. So I've also been looking at our New Albany SkyTrack camera, but otherwise no other reports so far at this time. But obviously I'm sure they're going to be coming back in here over the next couple of minutes. And we're going to continue to keep a close eye on these SkyTrack cameras too.
Yeah, lots of lightning. Certainly some folks are going to get a little less sleep than they wanted tonight probably. Wind is the bigger issue. One more minute on the tornado warning as it moves closer to Salem. We'll see if that gets extended. Right now it looks like it's pretty much stretched out, so wouldn't anticipate that getting extended. But some of that depends on the damage that's occurring, and the Weather Service is evaluating that now. We have about another 15 minutes left on the other warning. I'm going to go back to the radar view, back to our home view. The other warning I'm talking about is a severe thunderstorm warning that stretches across parts of Washington, Harrison, Crawford, and western parts, and there you see it. So they've replaced the tornado warning with a severe thunderstorm warning, but notice it's outlined in black, and that means tornado possible. So anytime we see that there could be rotation, but it doesn't look like a huge chance, meaning that it could happen, but it's more sort of stretched out like I mentioned, then it's a severe thunderstorm warning. Wind speed still possible with this 1-inch hail. This is the tornado warning that you're looking at here. That will be replaced with a severe thunderstorm warning. Still 60-mile-per-hour winds possible with that, and that will go until 2 a.m. So that's a long sort of warning as it stretches all the way into western Jefferson County, Indiana, and northern parts of Clark County from Henryville to New Washington. That warning will go until 2 a.m. So you're going to see this tornado warning fall off here in a minute. That expires at 1:15, being replaced with a severe thunderstorm warning that will go until 2 a.m. Winds with this still could exceed 60 miles an hour. Hail anywhere probably less than 1 inch. We haven't had a whole lot of hail reports out of these storms at this time. Again, we're just now at 1:15, and as soon as the computer reads that, it'll be replacing that tornado warning with the severe thunderstorm warning. There it is, and you can see the latest on that. 60-mile-per-hour winds comes with that tag tornado possible as we track that storm right through Salem. So weakened a bit just in time in terms of the rotation, but I will stress again, doesn't matter if the winds are rotating or not, they have had a history of producing damage. And 60-mile-per-hour winds, straight line winds, can cause some problems. What we look at in these radar echoes like this would be where we have these bowing segments, and that's one there moving into Salem, right at the apex of that bow, just passing through. So you can see that would be a zone of some very strong wind, possibly 50, 60-mile-per-hour winds. I'm going to go back. I'm going to lift the radar up. Now that we have a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings, the other bow that we see is just down here. And again, it's more of the same. So we'll be tracking this as it continues to move off to the south. It's that zone, right? That leading edge, really, anywhere in these areas that I'm pointing out, I think it's safe to say we could probably mark the whole thing. That's the push of wind. That's what's moving our way. That's what's moving across Washington County. That's what's moving into western Clark County, Borden. That's what's moving across southern parts of Orange County, northern Harrison County, and eventually Floyd County. That's the severe thunderstorm warning. 2 of those in place. The one for Crawford, Floyd, Harrison, and Washington will go until 1:30. The one to the north will go until 2 o'clock as it moves to the east, 55 miles per hour. Any other reports coming in terms of power outages or from law enforcement? And we'll start with Tawana and then bump over to Jessica. Tawana, anything on your end?
So just getting in reports from a viewer who just sent me a video of damage in Paoli. Actually, she is doing a Facebook Live right now showing the damage in Paoli. She says power is out, debris is everywhere right now. So she's currently working to try to make sure she's safe, her family's safe. So thank you for sending in these reports. Super important, working to get a little bit more information as well. I'm looking at her Facebook Live right now and I'm seeing trees down.
Wow.
large branches down as well. So obviously they are working to make sure that they are safe. Seeing some, it looks like
part of the roof, maybe?
Part of her roof, looks like part of her fence is kind of slightly bent over. So they're continuing to really wake up right now and try to get a little bit more information on the damage. So we're literally doing minute by minute. I'm going through your comments, your reports, so thank you for sending those in, continuing to try to work to get to dispatches, but all of those have been busy, which, as Kevin has been talking about, that just implicates that there's some stuff going on there. So make sure, if you're out ahead of these storms as well, I've seen a couple of comments and questions from people. If you're in the line of these storms, especially if you're in a trailer, it's better that you take the precautions and get to a safe place now rather than waiting until the last minute. It's better to be safe than sorry in these types of situations. So thank you so much for sending these in. We're continuing to work to get a little bit more information and get a little bit more from you guys. So thank you for these reports, and we're continuing to work and get a little bit more information from this. But yeah, just getting in these reports from Paoli of all this damage that's continuing to come in. No word on severity of the damage, no word of any roofs off, but certainly seeing debris everywhere and certainly dealing with a little bit more of that. Kevin?
All right, exponentially, the power outages are going up as well. Jessica Dobson has a new update on those. Last check, we were at about 500 with 5% out. I see that's gone up quite a bit.
Yeah, we're now up to about 1,500 customers without power. That's going to be in Orange County in Indiana, and that's actually where Tawana was mentioning some of the damage was coming in from. And that same viewer says police and ambulance are clearing debris on the street. But I will say that about 13% of customers are without power. That's about 12,000 people total that they serve in Orange County in particular. We also have some power outages a little bit further to the south. We'll get a query of those. That's going to be in Crawford County, only about 60 customers without power. But again, these are kind of delayed, so I expect that number to go up a bit. And that's only 1% right now. But we'll keep you up to date if that changes, of course, which I imagine it will.
All right, I imagine that will too. We have that same area of wind moving closer to the metro area. That would mean western parts of Clark, Borden, Henryville, Greenville into Floyd County, moving closer to Corydon. We'll fire up our Corydon camera. That should start to see some of that wind momentarily. So Jessica's working on that. Let me go back to our radar view. This is going to take off the warning that we have, and then I can zoom this out. Let me just go back to our home view, point out here we are in Louisville. We are still a little bit of ways. So I'm going to, again, when we look at the lightning with these, we can see the storms based on the lightning. That lightning count has gone down a little bit. That's a good indicator that we are seeing at least some weakening in these storms. Same story when we had the tornado warning versus the severe thunderstorm warning. Some weakening with these storms. So that trend continues, at least in the last few minutes. Good news there. When we, again, put on the radar, and I'm just going to zoom back into the area that's moving closer to us, we, again, continue to watch two areas most intense. One's bowing out as it moves into now eastern parts of Washington County. That will take some strong wind across eastern Washington, western Scott County. You're under that severe thunderstorm warning until 2 a.m. So you've got another 40 minutes on that warning. We also have strong winds pushing across northern parts of Harrison County. The strongest of the wind is likely around New Salisbury. Going to move into northern Floyd County, up toward Greenville. That would be one area that we continue to watch as it moves off to the east. The storm's moving at about 50 to 55 miles an hour. The wind speeds have been impressive in places, enough to cause some trees down, power outages, some structural damage in places. You just heard Tawana go through some of the viewer reports as well as some of the dispatch reports out of Orange County. We know we've had reports come out of Du Bois County. So those are some areas that we know we have had reports of. And if I go to our home view, I'll show some of those reports as we take a look at the National Weather Service first. These are some of the storm reports. Notice the downed trees. This is Du Bois County. Again, typically a little delayed by the time we get them, especially at this time of night because so many people are asleep. But nonetheless, it's an indicator, strong winds, and that's what moved across Orange County. now into Washington, going to move into Scott County. So that was the one blast of wind. We know we have power outages in Orange, Du Bois, Crawford County. So that tells us there's pockets of heavy wind all along that line that's bowing out. That's moving off to the east at about 55 miles an hour. Other storm reports come in by means of our viewers, and again, these are even more limited because of the time frame. But when we look at those reports, we can look at the wind reports from MPING and see we have had some trash cans and twigs down in the southern part of Du Bois County, right along the interstate. That was one. Oftentimes we get those strong winds. We see snapped or even uprooted trees. We haven't had those, but I suspect that more of those will get added as people are waking up and being able to survey that damage. Hard to do at night, that's for sure. We go back to our reports and the radar view. Again, looking at where this is bowing out, we continue the severe thunderstorm warning for parts of Clark, Floyd, Harrison, and Washington counties. You see sort of the redrawn area. So as the storm moves into the polygon, they just clear it. It's that leading edge that packs the greatest punch. Some areas have had repetitive rain over and over. Those are the flood warnings you see flashing across parts of western Indiana. We're going to zoom back into the zone of highest wind, and that's in Indiana too, but getting closer to the Ohio River. That's going to take us from Daisy Hill to Borden, Henryville, Scottsville, Greenville. We said that would be moving in. New Albany will be in for some strong winds within the next, I'd say 15 minutes or so. You're going to see a blast of wind push in with that as it moves closer to the Ohio River. Again, there are no tornado warnings at this point, but we have had damage and we do have severe storms. It's late at night. Some people are waking up. We've made the call to stay on for just a little while longer until these storms at least get past the area or until they weaken enough to where we feel like there's no major problems. But at this point, we still have storms that are capable of producing 60, 70 mile an hour winds and with some of that damage that's been coming in. So it's been intense. And I'm going to just move the radar back up and we'll look at a couple of things. We obviously analyze the radar. We're going to use our scope. We'll use the velocity scope. We do not have a whole lot of hail with any of these, and I'll show you that too in a second. On the wind velocity, I'm just going to scan along the leading edge of that. And you can see the brighter colors. That's where we would have the pockets of heavier wind. So really there's wind along the whole thing, but embedded would be pockets of heavier wind. And you can see some of that regardless if it's red or green, that's where we would have some strong wind pushing through. So we've got that in northern parts of Floyd County. We'll have that also as you look up toward New Liberty and Daisy Hill, pushing across far eastern parts of Washington County. Stretching down toward Clarendon, it's not nearly as strong. All right, so that's an indicator of where we have the strongest of the winds. And consequently, it matches up with the severe thunderstorm warning. And that says, hey, we could have winds upwards of 60 miles an hour. They've got it outlined, all warnings in black, saying that there is enough shear and the possible rotation in the atmosphere that we could have a brief tornado. So they say tornado is possible, even though it's a severe thunderstorm warning. We continue to see the wind along this edge, and that has shown signs of sort of weakening at times and increasing at other times. The reason why that happens is because the low-level jet continues to increase, and as these thunderstorms pull those winds down to the surface, we can see those strong pushes of wind. So some areas get the strong winds while others don't, and that's why we don't have widespread massive damage. This isn't a huge derecho or something where it's just a big wall of wind moving in and you're going to see damage everywhere. That's not the case, but there are pockets along this line that will contain winds strong enough to do some damage. That's why we're seeing the power outages that we've noted. All right, I'm going to pull the radar down just a bit so we can look, hit zoom. Let me pull it down with the pan feature. There we go. And then we'll take a look farther to the north. We still have some wind moving across parts of Scott County, so not to ignore the warning that's going on just north. This one goes until 2 o'clock, so that's really been the strongest push of wind we've had all night. That's where the tornado warning came from, by the way, when it was back in Du Bois County, Orange County, Washington County. Now the leading edge of that's moving over into Scott County. It does not have as much rotation with it. We can see that by looking at the velocity, but it still packs a punch. Notice that bright color. That is indeed some strong strong wind that's moving across the county line from Washington County into Scott County, Indiana. Let's just zoom in because we're on to a very tight view of where we have that pocket of wind. That could cause some damage as it moves just south of Austin. It's going to move right along Indiana 56, just north of Leota. So that's an area with strong wind. Gibson had it, and so did Little York. Those are zones where we had that strong wind push roll its way through. This is working its way to the east at about 45 to 50 miles an hour. If it holds together, it's going to move right into Scottsburg. So that's some powerful wind that's moving in your direction in Scott County. That's one area that we're watching. Again, you've got just probably about 7-8 minutes for Scottsburg to see some of that strong wind. Let's just pan down. Let's just go down the leading edge of this. Let's see, I'm going to go back to the pan view. There we go. And then we're just looking for those pockets of heavy wind. We can see that there's wind moving through New Liberty, but it's nothing like what we saw to the north. There's Carwood, Starlight. We're working our way down into Clark County. There's Borden. You see Indiana 60. Jess, what do you have?
Just panned over our Corden SkyTrack camera, and that's where we have, it looks like the leading edge of the storm is pushing through, shaking around the camera quite a bit. We did see some lightning flashes, of course, but if we want to take that full, you can see it pretty well, better than probably you can in the screen behind me, where the flag there, it's kind of dark, I know, but it's really shaking around quite a bit. It looks like the rain's starting to fall as well. So if you're in Corden, the storm's arriving pretty much as we speak.
All right. And I'm also seeing some roof damage to homes and apartments and trees on roofs and roads. That was coming into the call center from Orange County. So those are some new reports that are coming in out of Orange County as this system moved through. So that goes back to say in Scott County, the western part, that strong wind moving in. Regardless, again, if it's rotating or just straight line, it's a pocket of heavy wind. We see another little pocket of wind moving towards Starlight, Indiana. This is going to take us down as we work our way into Floyd County. There's Greenville, Georgetown, Edwardsville. Work your way down into Floyd's Knobs. The strong wind right on the apex there, pushing toward 150, will be working its way toward Floyd's Knobs. Additional wind is moving into northern Harrison County. That's where we see Crandall. You see I-64. There's Breckenridge. Corden sits just south. There it is. You've already had that wind push through, as Jessica mentioned. Going to see a period of wind linger behind that leading edge. So we've gone through the wind all along that whole Boeing segment. I think it's Scott County that stands the chance to see the strongest winds out of what we've just noted all across that area. Again, it's not a tornado warning, but it is producing some strong wind, upwards of 60 miles per hour. In some cases, maybe even higher. So that's enough to down trees and power lines, especially in pockets that we've seen. You noted it wasn't like that along that entire edge. It was in pockets. It was isolated where we have those stronger winds. And that's why some folks get the damage and other folks don't. It's not a widespread, massive, severe weather outbreak, but it is one that has pockets of wind at 1:30 in the morning. It bears sort of watching and being prepared so you can know what's happening. And that's the deal. You can see that warning has expired that was leaning up against the Louisville area. We'll see if that gets reissued. In fact, it's about to come out. They're going to issue one for Jefferson, Harrison, Floyd. You see it goes all the way across the city. So NOAA weather radios, the Wave Weather app, everything is going off at this point because of the warning for Clark, Floyd in Indiana, Jefferson and Oldham in Kentucky. That's that same area that we're watching for the strong wind. We haven't had it yet. It's minutes away. It will be moving in. There's the potential for 50, 60 mile per hour gust. This could cause some problems as it moves closer to us. Again, lots of thunder and lightning with this. Let me just put the bolts on here so you can see that lightning that we've been watching on the SkyTrack cameras. You can see that. But again, that is weakening. That's a good sign because as that lightning eases, that's an indicator that the storms are gradually easing and letting up. We like that trend, and that trend will continue. These storms will continue to weaken. They're not going to continue to strengthen as the night goes on. They will be in the weakening phase. It's just that they're not quite there yet. And that's the reason the warnings keep getting issued down the line, is because we still have enough wind energy brought to the surface to where we are seeing some damage, whether that's trees down or power lines down. maybe because the trees are down on the power lines. Regardless of how it happens, that's what we've noted across the area. Let's go over to Tawana, see if she has any additional reports as we track these storms right here into the metro area. Tawana?
Yeah, just got off the phone with multiple ISP offices, and so far the only report that I've gotten in from them right now is some trees on the roadway 145 near Airport Road. They're currently working on trying to get that cleared out. So that's the latest thing I've gotten from ISP in terms of that. Still working on getting a little bit more information from the Orange County area, but it's still so difficult to get through with them because of so much going on right now. Of course, we got the reports earlier from that viewer of those trees down, those large branches down. So we're continuing to get more from that and working to get a little bit more information in that area. So that's the latest that I've got. I'm still making these calls. Thank you for everyone who has been sending in your reports this morning. It's been incredibly helpful. Keep it coming, keep it going, and make sure you're staying safe, especially for those of you out in front of these storms. It's better to get in your safe places now, as Kevin and Jessica have been saying throughout the early morning hours, and I'll work to get a little bit more for you, Kevin.
All right, appreciate that. Jessica, what do you have?
Yeah, we've now seen about a third of customers in Orange County, Indiana, the same spot that we've seen a lot of damage reports where we picked up a lot of those strong wind gusts when we were first joining you earlier this evening. We now have almost, we're just over 4,600 customers without power there. That's about 38% of total customers. That's about 12,000 they serve there, just over. So quite a few power outages right now in Orange County. So far, that's where we're seeing the worst of the reports. In parts of Crawford County, too, about 102 customers without power. That's out of about 8,000. So not quite as high of numbers there, but of course we did see, I think, the stronger gusts in places like near Paoli and Orange County. So we're still seeing that number increase. It's almost like every time I check, it continues to go up. And of course, we're going to watch for more of those reports. And I really think the wind is one of the big components that created some of these power outages so far.
Yeah, and when we look back at some of that rotation we saw moving through Orange County, very well could have been a touchdown. We won't know that until the Weather Service surveys the damage, but not far from French Lick earlier, we had the inbound, outbound winds pretty close together. That is now pushing off to the east, moving closer to Louisville. We are under the severe thunderstorm warning for the northern two-thirds of Jefferson County. So that goes all the way down toward J-Town, working your way toward Okolona, back up to Louisville, Portland, and then stretches back across the river, almost all of Floyd County, almost all of Clark County, all of Oldham County under the severe thunderstorm warning at this point. Strong wind, the main threat with that. We mentioned at last check on that northern storm, which is where we had the greatest threat for the tornado earlier as it moved across Du Bois, Washington counties, Orange and then Washington. That's up towards Scottsburg, and that's where we said we had a strong push of wind moving through. So let's check the velocity on that again, and that is where we continue to see some strong winds move through, and that's across Scott County, Indiana. That's going to be a push that's now taking it through Scottsburg, Austin, moving over toward Worcester, and eventually into western parts of Jefferson County, Indiana. So that's where we would continue to see that storm track. Our winds here in Louisville obviously have not gone up much. South at 8, no gust on the last check. That's going to be changing within the half hour. Winds will eventually go up for us. Now, will they be severe? Not for everybody, but perhaps for some, especially, let me show you, where we see this bowing out. We can see the bows a little bit easier on the reflectivity. So let me go back to that. And then let's just kind of zoom back in. You'll notice also that it is becoming a little more broken. This is another sign of weakening. So some good news. That trend is continuing. So I suspect that as we work the energy out of these storms moving off to the east, that things will gradually calm as these settle off to the south, all right? So that's some good news. Let's zoom back in. We'll zoom into the warning that we have. We mentioned the Boeing area. We have one in Scott County. There's more wind as you work your way down into far western, well, right along I-65 in Clark County, and then into Floyd County, just across the river. So we have pockets of wind in here that we're looking at. We could see winds 40, 50 miles an hour for several places, as high as 60 miles an hour for a few, and that's where we would have the greatest potential for damage. Otherwise, it's just a rainmaker and some gusty winds, maybe some rumbles of thunder, but even the lightning is letting up just a bit. I'll put that on for folks that may still be up watching the storms with us. You can see that lightning is still there. It's not gone, but it has certainly eased up just a bit over the course of time. And that's a sign that things are beginning to weaken just a bit. So that's our lightning indicator. Let's go back to the radar. I'm going to put this into motion so you can see that it is moving at a pretty good clip. We'll just play this. You can see as those storms move in, they are sort of rotating to the just notice that little rotate up. That's where we had the rotation. Boom, there it is across Orange County, right here. Boom. And so we had from French Lick through Paoli up towards Salem, where we had that little couplet showing up on the velocity. I can put the velocity on so you can see that as well. And now let's just play that. It's going to be a little tougher to see for you, but you'll notice. Moved pretty fast, tough to see, but that's the same storm that likely caused the damage from French Lick to Paoli, working your way towards Salem now in Scottsburg. That's the trajectory of the strongest wind, and that's what we've been pointing out over the course of the last half hour or so. Back to our reflectivity here as we go to the radar, and I'm looking at our SkyTrack camera in New Albany. We can show that. You'll see the rain is almost sideways, so the rain's picking up in New Albany. Going to be moving toward us here in the downtown area within a matter of minutes. We also have the wind picking up just a bit as well. So our SkyTrack cameras are valuable through storms like this because we can get that real time, that ground truth that we talked about. So when we look at these camera views, we've got Corydon, we've got one in Jeff, one downtown, one over in New Albany, we've got one up in Starlight. So as you work your way across the metro, we get a lot of camera views. That doesn't count the ones we have in E-Town and Bardstown and Simpsonville. So many views on these storms as they push their way in. It's helpful in emergency weather and severe weather. It's also very helpful in winter weather. We can see what's happening. I'll show you that view in just a second. Let's zoom out. I'm going to just pan the radar back over. The storms are just now moving into the metro. And let's go back down because I want to make sure we have Scott County in there. That's good. Again, the warnings continue, the one to the north until 2 o'clock, the one off to the south. That's a severe thunderstorm warning that includes the city of Louisville. That one will last a little longer as we go past the 2 a.m. hour. That goes until 2:15. It's mainly a wind maker, moving right toward downtown, but weakening just a bit. That's the general trend you're hearing me say over and over. Everything that we're looking at shows signs of weakening, so some good news, but it's still strong enough to produce winds that would be capable of downing a tree or two in pockets and also creating some power outages, which we've seen. So I'm going to go back to the velocity. And I think what we did a while ago was very helpful as we just kind of worked our way along this line looking for those pockets of heavier wind. Tough to see here. Again, the SkyTrack views. Let's go over to Jessica because she has those cameras behind her. And Jessica, you can just point out, go through some of those cameras and just show the wind because it's a visual story of kind of what we're going to see downtown. Gusty winds, yes, but are they tearing down the trees and power lines? No, not everywhere.
Right, and the flags, that's always one of our telltale signs that we can see some gusty winds across the area, and that's in New Albany, of course, where we just saw it looked like sideways rain that was coming down. And I'll also change our view to our Park Place SkyTrack camera to see if we can start to see that leading edge of the storm coming through. We were seeing some flashes of lightning. So far, not seeing a whole lot from that camera just yet. And of course, we have the harbors. Sometimes we can kind of see the storm structure moving. You can see a little bit moving over closer to the downtown Louisville skyline, but really this New Albany SkyTrack camera, that is one of the more remarkable ones there. You can see it shaking around quite a bit. The rain flowing sideways from those strong wind gusts. So that is what we're seeing right now. Of course, this is our New Albany SkyTrack camera, and we're going to watch for more reports. It looks like a couple of them coming in right now. Funnel clouds spotted north of Kellersville Road. Again, this is going to be in Du Bois County, in Jasper, St. Charles near Middle School, some trees down. Maple Grove on Portersville Road, a tree down there. So again, this is just this is in Du Bois County. That was a part of that same storm that was powerful, that was moving through a couple of our counties that we had near Orange County where a lot of our power is out there. And I'll go ahead and give you a quick update, too, of the power outages. So if you are along the leading edge of these storms, it's a good idea to make sure you have a flashlight handy, or if you've been charging your devices, because we have seen these power outages only exponentially go up here over the last couple of minutes. So looks like Orange County is still the worst. There's still, of course, a delay when it comes to some of our power outages, as we've been mentioning. About 2% out in places like Harrison County in Indiana, about 621 customers. And then also looks like near Salem, 18% in Washington County in Indiana. That's where we have almost 5,000 customers without power there. It looks like Tawana might have something for us too.
Yeah, and you're just saying that there was power out in Salem. I got a viewer to confirm that he's no longer with power. He said he's safe, he's fine. So some good news right there, but still without power overnight. Power out as well in Greenville, Indiana. And we got reports of a tree on a vehicle. Thankfully, it doesn't seem like anybody was in that vehicle, but a tree on a vehicle that is going to be on Main Street, West Main Street in Paoli, just inside the city limits. So still getting reports in of some damage in some spots. So certainly continuing to work to get a little bit more information with all of that this morning. But thankfully, so far, no injuries. So hopefully that stays that way. Kevin, that's some good news so far this morning, and working to get a little bit more information on some more things happening in the Orange County, Paoli area. Kevin?
Okay, as it seems, we have damage out of each of those locations. Could have been a tornado, could have been straight line winds. We won't know that until the damage surveys come in. We continue to get reports. One of the latest ones is a tree through the roof of a home in parts of Du Bois County. We are tracking the severe weather moving into Louisville, but it has weakened substantially across the area. I'm not even sure we're going to wind up seeing these warnings get extended any further. In Louisville, the rain is just now picking up downtown. The severe thunderstorm warning for Louisville and also Oldham County, so the chunk of Jefferson County, Clark County, Harrison County, Oldham County. We're under that warning until 2:15, so about another half hour on that severe thunderstorm warning. The one to the north expires at 2 o'clock. That's the one where we had the strong winds moving through Scottsburg, Austin, Vienna, moving across Scott County, Indiana. That's approaching western parts of Jefferson County, Indiana, and that will be making its way closer to Madison. But again, I mentioned that we are seeing this storm weaken just a bit, but it has produced enough wind where we have already received power outages out of Scott County. So let's just zoom into that and we'll take a closer view. We're moving through Booster. We're approaching Lexington. There's Swanville. This is going to work off to the east as this storm moves at about 50 miles per hour. When we look at the velocity, we're looking for pockets of strong wind or rotation. We can see the brighter colors showing up. So we've got pockets of strong wind moving into western parts of Jefferson County, not far and approaching Wakefield at this point. Here's Madison, just for some reference in Jefferson County. Swanville, Lexington. This is in Scott County, Lexington, Indiana, moving towards Swanville across the county line. That would be another push of strong wind. So that's where we're, again, seeing possibly power outages that would take place in those stronger pushes of wind. When we sort of drag this down, we're just focused on the outer edge of this storm. The strongest winds have passed Nab and Otisco, moving toward New Washington. You'd be next in line. Skylight, Indiana, down to Goshen. That's Kentucky, Skylight, Kentucky. Goshen. We're in Oldham County here. Prospect, already seeing some of the strongest winds approach your area, downtown. So now that we have the storm pushing across Louisville, let me zoom out. We'll go back to our home view, put the reflectivity back on. And there we have it. And you can see the strongest of the storms hugging the river, pushing through. We see some of those storms, again, weakening, more broken than they were earlier. Heavy rain causing problems with the potential for flash flooding. The severe weather threat, while it is easing, it is not reduced enough to wipe out the warnings. That would be nice. Then we could all go to bed. It's going to happen. It's just happening. It's going to happen probably as, the next hour unfolds. Half hour to 45 minutes, I'd say. We're in pretty good shape as these storms move off to the east and gradually weaken. The strongest, again, remains to the north. Here in Louisville, while we do have some wind with these storms, it's not all that strong. So we continue to see that part of the system weaken as it moves through. So for Louisville, Yes, we have the severe thunderstorm warning. It goes until 2:15. That will continue moving to the east. The northern part of this packs the greater punch. So we continue the severe thunderstorm warning for Clark, Jefferson, and Scott counties until 2 o'clock. You'll see them trim this up, taking out parts of Clark County, taking out parts of Harrison County. The storm's already passed those zones. So you'll see for us, it's still going to include Jefferson, Clark, Oldham counties, and that warning will go until 2 o'clock this morning. I'll zoom back into that general area as we continue to watch the two warnings that we have. One's to the north, again, strongest winds there now moving into western Jefferson County. The telltale will be, will this get extended farther to the east across the rest of Jefferson County, Indiana, including Madison and Hanover, northern parts of Trimble County, and perhaps even into Carroll County, Kentucky. That will be one area of concern. It is weakening, so I'm not sure that will even get extended. The southern part, now that we have the rain moving into Louisville, it too is weakening. So when you look at the big board on what we have going on, we have the two severe thunderstorm warnings, one for about another 30 minutes. That's the one for Clark, Floyd, pretty much out of Floyd, Clark, Jefferson, Oldham counties. And then the other one's going to be allowed to expire farther to the north. That includes Scott County and Jefferson County, Indiana, for another 14 minutes. When we had those tornado warnings earlier, you had to get low, needed to get in your tornado safe place. At this point, the tornado threat is easing as well. We only have severe thunderstorm warnings in place. Both of those, while they include the metro area and parts of southern Indiana, have weakened. All of the storms have areas of lightning, but even as much lightning as there is, we've seen a weakening trend. Let's go over to Jessica, who's keeping up some of the power outages and other reports.
Yeah, it's pretty clear. You can see where the strongest of the winds have taken place, because near Paoli in Orange County, Indiana, we also have Washington, and already in Scott County too. That's where we have some of the more higher number of power outages there with some of the customers. So about 10% out. That's just over 1,500 customers in Scott County in Indiana, also near Salem. So if you are in Salem and you are without power, it's likely due to some of the more powerful wind gusts, whether that was the straight line winds or if it was from some of the rotation or if it was a tornado. Regardless, nearly 5,000 customers without power there, about 18%. So that's still a pretty large number. And then, of course, the highest numbers we've seen so far have been in Orange County, about 40% without power, almost half, almost 5,000 without power in Orange County.
All right, we're getting reports closer to the metro. This is going to be Clark County, Indiana, and this is trees down across the county. Fire and police units are en route to I-65 southbound at the 17-mile marker for a large tree across the interstate there. So again, Clark County, Indiana, starting to feel the effects of this wind that we've mentioned. So even though it was weakening, it's not weakened enough, and that was the whole concern of what would happen as these storms move closer to the metro. We'll be watching the wind speeds. We have anemometers in place. We'll be able to get real-time measurements. But again, Clark County, I-65, 17-mile marker, that's where we know we have a large tree across the interstate. I'll put the radar on. You can see the severe thunderstorm warning in the background. That, again, is already past places like Borden and Henryville, even past Sellersburg. So the worst of the wind is across 65. That's obvious. We've got the trees down across parts of Clark County. That's moving into northeast Jefferson County, western parts of Oldham County, and downtown Louisville, including Portland and Shively, seeing some of those stronger winds move in. When we talk about those pockets of wind where we have the strongest potential wind available, again, that would be over toward the Goshen area, perhaps down toward Prospect, and then up into western parts of Jefferson County, Indiana, and then the far eastern parts of Clark County, not far from New Washington. So those are areas of where on the radar we can see those stronger pockets of wind, as we've mentioned. Just pan this down so you can see Jefferson County where we're looking at that. So moving out of Lexington, Indiana, that's eastern parts of Scott County, into western Jefferson County, from Wakefield down to Saluda. That will quickly move back across the river into northern Trimble County, not under a warning at this point. So the warning for Jefferson, Oldham, Shelby, Trimble, southern Trimble, continues, and that will go until 2:15. So I'm curious to hear more about what's going on 65 and in Clark County, because that's a direct reflection of what may happen here in the city. So let's go over to Tawana to see if she has any additional reports on the I-65 tree that was at mile marker 17. So that takes you just up toward the Memphis area.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on it. I'm looking at, even if you can see behind me right here. So this is one shot what's happening on 65 right now. This is from INDOT, from one of their cameras there. So certainly seeing a lot of police activity in this area as they're continuing to potentially work and clear this out. So this is just one of the scenes. If you are going to be one of those people traveling this morning, if you can hold off on that, let the storms pass and then go, that would be the best idea. But still working at a little bit more information on this right now. INDOT is not reporting anything, but certainly seeing a lot of police activity showing up on some of those cameras right now in parts of Clark County. I'm going to continue to work to find out a little bit more information with this and potentially call ISP and see if they can get me any more information as well. Kevin?
Okay, wind seems to be the biggest issue that we've seen throughout the evening here and into the early overnight hours. We have a number of power outages. Can't rule out additional power outages, but the overall trend is that these storms are slowly weakening, and that trend will continue. So we're not going to go backwards on that, but it just takes a little bit of time to get these storms below severe limits. We have seen massive damage out of Orange County, Du Bois County, weakened a little bit as it moved through Washington and into Scott, but we still have had enough damage that we have a number of power outages up that way. And then even on the southern part of this, and let me go back to the reflectivity here, because even on this edge, so now approaching the airport, we should start to be seeing some of the real-time wind information in, even though it's weakened substantially for us at the airport, still a little higher as you work your way into southern Oldham County and northern and northeastern parts of Jefferson County. Let's go to Jessica. I know while I'm focused on Louisville and the metro here, mainly because of the large population, we have also had a number of power outages areas to our north.
Yes, I was just trying to pick up some of the wind gusts to see if we'd had any major reports just yet. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit on power outages, because you'll see really where the swath of the strongest winds have been, and that's where we've had the highest number of power outages. So the darker shades you see are where we have a higher percentage of those power outages. So far, the highest has been in Orange County. And I'll give you another view too, 42%. That number continues to go up. Power is out as well this is from Tawana in Crestwood, Kentucky, and that's going to be from a viewer on Facebook. So as always, we appreciate your reports. Orange County, we're starting to see in Floyd County, Indiana, and Clark County, we're starting to see more power outage numbers there, about 9%. That's roughly 4,400 people without power. Overall, customers served are about 49,000. So we've continued to see these numbers go up, and we'll likely still see that. Just goes to show you got to make sure you're prepared and have those devices all charged up and ready to go, just in case you are without power, especially if you don't know how long it's going to be out for. Kevin?
All right, and I was just looking at the LG&E app here to see if any in the metro have lost power, at least at this point. Now, Crestwood, that's getting pretty close to us. That's just across the river over here in Oldham County, so it's along that leading edge. So we should be seeing, and there's our latest gust. So I was waiting for that to pop on, but it was just 23 miles an hour at the airport, so it would have just hit. You can see this is the Watterson, this is the Gene Snyder, the airport's right here. So we just picked up that gust at the airport. That's tolerable. We can take anywhere up to 40 miles an hour, usually without any major problems. So that's, again, starting to weaken. That trend continues. There are pockets, and we noted that Crestwood without power. Some power outages can occur with lower wind speeds if trees have been compromised from storms past. Maybe there are branches that are just hanging there, and a 20, 30 mile an hour wind shakes it out, comes down on a power line. You got a power outages. So there's a number of ways to get power outages in these storms, but nonetheless, the trend is important, and that is that these storms continue to weaken. We have the severe thunderstorm warning in place until 2:15. That's another 20 minutes across metro Louisville, now moving across the eastern part of Jefferson County, Middletown, J-Town, just north of Okolona, but again, not all that strong off to the south. It's farther to the north where we have those stronger winds, and that's what we continue to see as we work our way off to the to the south. Now let's go back to the north, and I'll point out that we have had strong winds moving across Jefferson County, Indiana, and that is a place where now that continues to weaken. The velocity will show that. Those pockets are still in there, so we still have some strong wind moving out of that warning. So even into an area where there is no warning across northern Trimble County, that's north of Bedford. Again, it's windy, but it's not severe limits. So we continue to track that to the east. No warning. Good news, weakening trend. And I think that's going to be the case. This may be the last gasp of what we're seeing as it moves through, because these storms, oops, hit the draw. Let me go back to our radar. There it is. We continue to see that weakening phase take place as it moves across parts of western Jefferson County, Indiana, back into Oldham County, all the way down into Jefferson County. We'll go back to our home view here so you can see that, and I'll put it into motion. And you should be able to notice the weakening trend as we look back over the last couple of hours. And there it is. You can see those storms were much stronger as they came across Illinois into Indiana. And where you had the heaviest rain training over that same area, we have the flash flooding that remains a concern up there because it's still raining, even though it's starting to end. And then we had what we call those little squiggles in the line, or that where you had that bowling ball effect where it pinwheels around. That was the area of main concern. You'll watch it right there, and I'll point it out again. Here it comes right there. That's where we had that possible tornado, Orange County, Washington County damage. And that matches completely with where we have the strongest or the most number of power outages. So we're down to the final 2 severe thunderstorm warnings. This one will expire at 2 o'clock, 3 more minutes on this one. And this one is across eastern parts of Scott County, western Jefferson County, northern Clark County. That one will expire at 2 o'clock and will not be extended because it would have already been the case. We also have the one across Metro Louisville and Oldham County that's in place until 2:15, and likewise will likely not get extended as long as this trend continues, and that should certainly be the case. Still seeing some damage reports coming out of Du Bois County. They seem to be among the hardest hit, along with Orange County, but this time of night it's tough to get reports, so we rely just on the emergency personnel. Let's go over to Joanna. She's been keeping an eye on all of your comments and making phone calls to emergency managers and area 911 centers to see what's the real picture of what's happening this early morning hour.
Yeah, just got off the phone with ISP Sellersburg. So we have a number of large limbs down between the 10 and the 12 mile marker. This is going to be on 65, so near the Sellersburg area. And also what we were hearing on 65, got more information on that, a wreck at the 17 mile marker. So this is going to be in between the Memphis and the Henryville exits. So what apparently happened, according to dispatch, a tree fell as the storms moved by. A semi apparently veered to try to maybe not hit that tree, and that caused the crash in that area and took out a guardrail there. So it's going to take them some time to get that cleaned up. She wasn't sure exactly how long this would take, but certainly going to be a busy area. So if anybody's traveling near there, certainly going to see those delays already showing up, and continue to keep an eye on that for this morning. So once again, that wreck is going to be the 17 mile marker on 65. So this is going to be between the Memphis and the Henryville exits where that tree came down and potentially caused that semi to crash. Kevin?
All right, appreciate that very much. Again, when we were talking about the tree on top of the interstate, now we have more information on that. Semi slides in, tries to avoid that, hits the guardrail. Now we've got traffic problems that'll probably take you into the morning rush, depending on how bad that is. The best news we have to deliver is the message we've been sending over the last half hour or so, and that is, things are easing up. We first noted the lightning count going down. We then noticed the more broken area on the reflectivity. We then saw less in terms of velocity. So all signs point to a weakening trend with these storms as they continue to move through. In Louisville, our latest gust from the airport, 40 miles an hour. Remember a while ago, we were at 23, so we could handle up to 40. That's what we're seeing now in Louisville. That was the strongest wind gusts that we've had from the airport. You can see additional storms and those wind gusts moving across Oldham County. Let me pause the radar. I'll just stop it there, and then we can zoom in. So in general, the trend is good. This is the only warning we have. It's in place for 15 more minutes. Many areas across Metro Louisville could hear the heavy rain falling. Maybe you're just now waking up. We've been tracking severe weather all night since before midnight across the area. We had tornado warnings to our north. That included parts of Du Bois, Orange County, Washington County in Indiana. And here we are in Louisville with a severe thunderstorm warning that includes Metro Louisville as well as Oldham County. Again, it is easing a bit. We still have the heavy rain. We still have some lightning and thunder around. But for the most part, the wind's 40 miles an hour, enough to wake you up, but not enough to do a lot of damage. Might blow the patio furniture around a little bit. But just keep in mind that this trend is good because it's not going to reverse. I mean, while we could see a pocket of heavy wind here or there, the general trend will be as this moves across parts of Henry County, Shelby County, to continue to weaken that. So if you're watching us from those areas, down in, say, Mount Washington, Taylorsville, Shelbyville, Eminence, Newcastle, wherever you may be watching there, the trend is to weaken this as it moves into your area. So, yeah, there could be some thunder and lightning, winds 25 to 35 miles an hour, but the trend, again, to take the storm chances down in terms of intensity. When we continue to see what we're looking at across our area, we do have some pockets of the heavy wind that we've mentioned, and we'll kind of pan this around. This is the only warning we have, but additional storms continue back out across southern Harrison County. I see along 64 as Jessica's taking a closer view. We still see a pocket of heavy wind moving closer to Crawford County. This is going to be right along the interstate there, Jess.
Yeah, and Crawford County already has quite a few customers without power, so not really ideal to see this little pocket. It's where you have that bright shade of green, and it looks like near Siberia, right along I-64, just outside of Crawford County, but I have a feeling over the next couple of radar scans, it will likely work its way into the county. I also do want to give an update on some of our power outage numbers from LG&E specifically. I've been refreshing the page quite a bit. So far, it says just 404 customers without power, but that was last updated at about 149. So that was several minutes ago. And we also, this area, it's going to be near the I-71 and the Gene Snyder interchange, kind of near the Costco, near the paddock shops. That's where we have a pretty large cluster of folks without power there, and that's where we had several reports all the way up to Crestwood and Prospect. So that's where we've seen a large number of those power outages, specifically in Jefferson County near Louisville, in the Louisville area, all the way towards Oldham County too. And again, there's a little bit of a delay, so we'll likely get some more of those updated numbers and increasing numbers, unfortunately, over the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, I think with sunrise tomorrow, we'll really get a good idea of just how much damage there's been. I mean, we called into the 911 center. They were so busy they couldn't take the call, understandably, if you're that busy. And we continue to see and hear, not only through the power outages, but through people who live there, that power is out, trees are down, structures are damaged. We've had trees gone through roofs of homes, apartment complexes with the roof peeled back. So again, what has unfolded tonight is still a little murky or unclear. What we continue to track are a weakening, thankfully, line of showers and thunderstorms that's now broken that will continue to move across eastern Jefferson County, southern Jefferson County, including Okolona, and across Oldham County. Again, moving out of the warning area that expires in 10 minutes. I'm not certain that this will get extended. In fact, with the weakening nature of this, it's most likely that it will not. We continue to see damage reports coming in from so many of the emergency managers across parts of Du Bois and Orange counties at this time. So that's really now starting to pick up, and that storm moved through there roughly about an hour or so ago. So it gives you an idea of the lag time that we see in some of these reports. And some of He's keeping up with some of the viewer comments on our social streams, as well as making calls to so many. I see you've got the Trimark cameras or the IDOT cameras up in Indiana.
Yeah, I'm still keeping an eye on what's happening over in that particular area. So once again, for those of you who maybe just be tuning in right now, so it looks like 65 southbound. This is a wreck near the 17-mile marker. Slide slightly out of the way. Let me go this way. 17-mile marker. This is in between the Memphis and the Henryville exits. This is where a tree came down. A semi veered to 9. not hit it and cause that crash and took out a guardrail. So they're working on clearing that scene right now. Multiple limbs down across the 65 area near Sellersburg as well on the roadway. So once again, this morning, as we have these storms moving through, we're running into a situation where it's dark, it's early in the morning, there are trees and limbs down. So this is just a reminder to take it slow if you are traveling this morning. I know some of you just have to travel, and that's just how it is, and I completely understand that. But you're going to have to take it slow. And even later on this morning, before that sun comes up, you're still going to run into a situation where if you're moving too quickly, you could run up on a tree, some limbs down, it can cause damage to you, to your vehicle. So you want to make sure that you're not doing that. Continue to work in a little bit more information on what's coming in from our Paoli area. Still working on this. And this scene right now, this is actually on the Waterston Expressway. This is right near the Shelbyville Road exit. I've been trying to keep an eye on that, working to get a little bit more information. According to Trimark, it's just police activity in this area. So we've been trying to work, and the left lane is blocked. No word on if this is a crash, if this is just somebody pulled over. So I'm working to get a little bit more information on that. But you certainly see that rain just coming down, and everyone just moving very slow in that area this morning. So certainly busy on the roads as well, even though there's not a lot of people out in the roads. Jessica, you got a little bit more information for us as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly tell you guys an updated report from LG&E. About 4,000 customers, 4,100 to be exact, without power, and most of them are along northeastern parts of Jefferson County and into Oldham County as well. So that's what we're seeing in terms of our updated LG&E numbers.
Okay, Jessica, thank you. Let me just point out that we are in touch with so many emergency managers and police departments and fire departments, getting some reports that a tree is on a house in Clark County, Indiana. And then over in Du Bois County, they're requesting extra police because of the number of trees that are down across 56. So Highway 56. So we do have some major problems across parts of Du Bois, Orange, Washington, and even into parts of northern Clark County. It seems like we could have, in western Clark County, we could have some problems. Now, they have just allowed this warning to expire. It will not fall off of here until 2:15, which was the original expiration time. But for all intents and purposes, all warnings have now expired. I'm going to zoom out on the radar. We're going to take one more lap around the three of us here tracking these storms, and then we'll get you to bed. All right, let's zoom out, go back to our home view. I'll point out there are no additional warnings back to the west of what's moving in our direction. We do have some storms back out here. Those will be far faded out by the time they reach our viewing area in terms of the weakening phase. We will continue to watch some of the rainfall rates because while it's moving, there are pockets of heavy rain that could cause some areas of flooding. That would be especially true with this batch of rain along 64, Crawford County, southern Orange County. We'll watch that closely. But at this point, the threat of severe weather is ending. While we have the warning that's shaped on here, the Weather Service has expired that early. It was set to expire at 2:15. The threat is over. It's already moving out of that. They're not going to extend that warning at this point. The strongest part of that storm is in the southern part of that polygon as you work your way toward Okolona, McNeely Lake, over toward Glen Mary, Seatonville, eventually Mount Washington. This is going to push off to the east. Fisherville would be next in line for that. So that's one area where we're seeing some heavy rain, perhaps a push of wind. Our latest gust out of the airport, we went from 40 to 38, so we do have some gust. But remember, I said 40-mile-an-hour winds. We can handle that. It's enough to get your attention. It might wake you up, but it's not going to destroy things. We have had some powerful and destructive winds across parts of Indiana. Back to our home view. I'm going to put this into motion, and then again, we'll get you back to bed. So let's go back and push play. And you can see those storms moved across this area a number of times, and that's why we have the flood warnings. You'll notice across Du Bois County, sort of that little spin that you saw there, move into Orange County, there it is, up into Washington, Scott, northern parts of Clark. That was the zone we had the strongest wind. That's where we had possibly even a tornado. We'll know that tomorrow as the Weather Service surveys it. We've had a number of damage reports out of that as it moved through Du Bois, into Orange, into Washington, into Scott, western and northern parts of Clark. So those have been the hardest hit areas. We have seen some power outages in parts of Oldham County, including Crestwood. That's about the only report I think we've had on this side of the river. Let's again make our lap around. We'll start with Tawana. Tawana, do you have any additional additional information. I know for the morning commute now we'll be looking at possible traffic issues because of that semi accident over on 65.
Yeah, and still keeping an eye on that and still seeing the delays showing up in that area this morning. Of course, not a lot of traffic showing up right now, so the fact that we're already seeing issues now at 2:10 a.m. just shows you the extent of how long it may take for them to clean up this. So once again, for those of you who may be just tuning in or maybe didn't hear before, this is going to be 65 south right by the 17-mile marker. So this is going to be in between the Memphis and the Henryville exits. The tree came down onto 65 as somebody veered to try to not hit it, and that caused the crash and took out the guardrail. So it's going to take some time to get that cleared out. Of course, we're hearing about those trees down in Clark County as well, and just getting in a report of power just going in and out in portions of Oldham County east of Westport. So continuing to get more information in, and thank you for everyone who sent in your reports this morning. Jessica?
Yeah, so we still do have the same report from LG&E. It looks like they were updating their website about every 15 minutes or so. The last update was about 2:04, so roughly 6 to 7 minutes ago just now. But the worst of the power outages at this point in terms of our percentages will be in Orange County in Indiana, about 5,300 without power in Orange County in Indiana. Similar situation near parts of Salem and into Washington County in Indiana as well, 20%. So these numbers continue to go up. We haven't gotten an official number just yet either from Jefferson County, but all of these numbers are going up, and hopefully we'll be able to see some dry time for the crews to get out and repair these things as we head throughout the next couple of days, especially.
All right, Jessica, thanks. Looking at some of the reports coming out of Salem, that's in Washington County. We have fallen trees on vehicles and on roads, fallen power lines, fallen trees on homes, and damage to houses there. So again, we mentioned Du Bois, Orange, Washington, Salem is what I just read, up into parts of Scott County, northern and western parts of Clark County. That was the zone that was hardest hit. Could have been a tornado. We had tornado warnings through a chunk of that. Again, that will be surveyed by the National Weather Service at daybreak tomorrow. These storms continue to move through. They are weakening. We have noted additional development off to the south, but this will likely stay below severe limits. That's moving across Grayson County as you push along the Western Kentucky and Bluegrass Parkway into western parts of Hardin County near Elizabethtown. So storms will fire along those outflow boundaries, and that is what we're watching. Those storms, again, will likely stay below severe limits even to the south. These are all weakening that have pushed across parts of Indiana, so we'll continue to track those off to the south and east. We'll be here all night to keep an eye on it. Tawana starts bright and early at 4:30 in the morning for those of you who may be awake for sunrise. Hopefully you can get a few hours sleep. For Jessica, Tawana, myself, we'll say good night for now, but we'll be here to keep an eye on the radar, and should we need to pass along any additional information, we'll be here. Be sure to tune in to Sunrise for the latest damage as the sun rises tomorrow. Have a good night.
Issues like this get discussed.